Once I went to take him down, I clinched up with him and I had him up against the cage. My body wasn't doing what my mind was telling it to do. I didn't feel right. My heart started making weird rhythms, my breathing was off. I knew something was wrong. I felt nauseous, lightheaded, I wanted to vomit, but there was nothing in my stomach. I'm there, I throw a jab, I step back, and then all of a sudden I just fall over, and you know, my hand shoots up to the sky, and I felt like something was wrong with my body. I could see like a fuzzy white light. It was hallucinating. Literally like the colors of stuff was like shimmering and stuff. And I could hear like voices in the background. It didn't seem bad, and then the next thing you know, it went black. My body just couldn't take it anymore and it gave out on me. I died for 5 minutes.
I'm Mark Bader, a former college wrestler at the University of Missouri. Weight cutting in folk style and international wrestling isn't anything new. People have been doing it forever.
As an MMA fan and journalist, I've noticed the same extreme weight cutting measures within the sport of MMA. This had me wondering, how prevalent is this? Is it happening at all levels? Pro and amateur? Local? Regional? International?
Yeah, there is a cultural stigma behind weight cutting. It's a part of the process. It's the first fight is against the scale. You know, that's the hardest fight. And a lot of athletes, they buy into that BS. And they're just parroting what they hear that make themselves feel better about doing something that's so insane.
I feel like we have to move away from this weight cutting thing because there's a difference between this sport and any other sport. The head trauma aspect of it makes weigh-ins 24 hours a day extremely problematic when we understand the science of rehydrating the brain can take as much as 70 plus hours.
While MMA has evolved quickly in a short amount of time, the methods behind weight cutting remain archaic and outdated.
It is part of the badge of honor. Hey man, we put up with difficult and uncomfortable situations.
They have this glorification of suffering in their mind that in some way allows them to knowingly put themselves in harm's way.
This isn't just affecting the fighters and their health. Promoters across the world are having fights canceled due to bad weight cuts.
Khabib Nurmagomedov was infamously pulled from his main event title fight because this athlete couldn't make weight.
Promotions have problems with weight cuts based upon finance. It's costing them big money.
The promoter does not want to say, we just lost our co-main event due to weight cutting. It makes the whole sport look silly.
The general consensus seems to be, isn't this just part of the job? Just something that needs to be done in order to compete?
When they get on the scale and they flex and they say 170, sure, you're 170 for about an hour. It's supposed to be about a fight where two equally skillful individuals try to figure out who's got the best strategy and who's got the best will and technique. It's not supposed to be about who can do this legal cheating thing best.
This is the worst thing that we have for fighter safety and health going on right now, that we don't have a whole, lot of people trying to do something about it.
Extreme weight cutting is clearly an issue, and one that seems to have dire consequences for both the fighter's health and the competitiveness of the sport as a whole. Is this just normal for MMA? Can anything be done to stop the extreme weight cutting? What's currently being done?
I've decided to travel around the country to speak with weight cutting experts, regulators, and athletes to learn more about this increasingly risky method of getting ahead in the sport.
Started working with Rhonda before the Misha 2 fight, and she contacted me because she was having a lot of trouble with her nutrition and with her health, and she was always sick, she was always hurt, and she's been vocal, she's spoken about this before. To go down to 135, again, it wasn't a difficult weight cut, if you will. There was a methodical process. She would have breakfast and lunch the day before weigh-ins, and they would cut weight the night before. We never cut weight until the night before weigh-ins, and we'd be on weight in the morning. My name's Mike Dolce. I am the owner of the Dolce Diet and Fitness.
We're standing here outside of Dolce Fitness in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we're here to talk to Mike Dolce, one of the top weight management coaches in the world. He's helped dozens of fighters make weight for fight day. We're here to talk to him about that process and how it works.
As a high school wrestler, I cut weight hundreds of times. I cut weight all the wrong ways. I cut weight, literally getting garbage bags, plastic garbage bags, punching holes through, tucking them in, putting sweatsuits on, tucking the sweatsuits in, pedaling away with a propane heater, just blasted up sky high, getting locked in saunas, with all my teammates as a kid, coaches leaning on the door, suffering, not eating, living on a can of tuna fish with a little bit of mustard on top. And I was put into the role of helping my teammates make weight and get in shape, and it was just something I was, I think, gifted in. So the primary difference between weight cutting and weight loss is weight cutting is the temporary reduction in body weight for a specified purpose. Weight loss is a long-term reduction in total body mass. Now, weight cutting, you see most athletes cutting weight because they have to weigh in and then they go out and compete. This issue of weight cutting is really, it's the mismanagement of their health. They're drinking only distilled water. They're living on protein powder and a handful of spinach for a week or two before their weight class to completely deplete and break down their body so they can simply make weight. We're talking 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning, 7 p.m. on Wednesday night, running back and forth between the exercise room, on the treadmills, in the sauna, and then the gear would come off and maybe he'd sit in the hot tub a little bit, and that's normal. You see this all the time. 24 hours later, they have to go and have the best athletic performance of their career. So it's counterintuitive, it makes no sense. You give me 10 different athletes, I'll probably give you, 10 different horror stories about they'll actually be making weight for that competition. Very, very, very rarely, unfortunately, are athletes doing it correctly.
What did you think as you're refereeing UFC 2?
What the hell am I doing here? I'm being honest, dude, I swear to God.
The sport of MMA has changed a lot in the last 25 years. Legendary referee Big John McCarthy's had a front row seat to see that evolution.
The very first fight I did, it was a guy named Scott Morris against Sean Dougherty. And they were the first fight of the night. He ends up taking Sean down, throws him over, neck cranks him, he taps out, and I go, this is gonna be easy. And from that moment, that night turned completely on me. And I was in trouble because I wasn't supposed to stop the fights.
In recent years, he's become an outspoken advocate against weight cutting. So we've traveled here to Las Vegas to speak with him about the changes that have taken place and where the sport's heading in the future.
My name, well, I'm known as Big John McCarthy, even though I'm smaller now. It's a nickname that was given to me long ago. I've been an MMA referee for almost 25 years. Well, the UFC started, November 12th of 1993. I was training with the Gracies, I was training with Royce. I was one of his sparring partners to get him ready for it. Since I was big, I was like 305 pounds back then. Rorion came to me and said, I need you to do me a favor. And I said, what's that? And he goes, I need you to referee. And I go, I don't know how to referee. He goes, look it, you know more about fighting than any of these guys. You're gonna do great with that. He goes, and you don't mind seeing people get hurt. So my qualification was I didn't mind seeing people get hurt. The evolution of MMA it's incredible. This sport is still in its infancy. There's guys doing things now that in the past we said you could never do that. You'll never be able to do that technique. That technique will never work in this type of fighting. And guys are doing it in every show. There was no weight classes in the beginning. There was one weight class. You wanted to fight? I don't care what you weigh. No one had to step on a scale. And it became, evident. Look, there's a lot of guys out there that are really good athletes, good fighters, but they're a smaller person. and you're asking them to fight against this large person. Weight does have an effect. Strength has an effect. The weight in itself, for the smaller person, he's got to deal with that weight, he's got to carry that weight, and that can wear him out. And so our first weight categories that we put in, where we had the heavyweights, which was basically 200 pounds and above, and we put in the lightweight at the time was 199 and below. Right away, Tito Ortiz was the guy that you could look at. Tito is a guy that's walking around at 6 foot, 3 inches tall, and probably walking at 230 pounds. And he was cutting down to that 199. So he was this gigantic guy going against other guys that were, not quite as big, and it was because of weight cutting. And he was good at it. When the unified rules came out, we went from having basically 3 different weight classes to then having 155, 170, 185, 205, and heavyweight. Those were the real weight classes that the UFC was using. That's when weight cutting really started to come about and become more prevalent.
With humans, there's always the need to find an advantage. If I'm gonna weigh in at 180, and my opponent's gonna weigh at 180, and we both walk around at 200 pounds, I might say, well, what if I can drop down to 170, and I can actually compete against an athlete who normally weighs 190? Well, that gives me an advantage.
The idea is, I want to be the bigger, stronger guy in my weight class.
Now athletes are cutting even larger amounts of weight to try and gain an advantage over their opposition to see, well, who can actually cut more weight. And there's athletes who weigh 200 pounds who are trying to make 155 pounds. That means they're going to be competing against athletes who normally weigh maybe 180 pounds, which is still a massive athlete for 155. So it was the athletes are trying to, even competition, and then it was, well, I'm going to drop to gain this advantage, and then the other athlete is forced to drop to make sure that they're not at a disadvantage.
When you're looking at why do fighters cut? They cut because they believe that is what is going to get them the money. It's going to allow them to win against a good opponent because they're going to be that bigger, stronger guy. They've been given an opportunity to fight, get them to that next level of monetary value that they're worth, and so they're going to take that chance.
Unfortunately, too many athletes, they simply wait until a week or two before competition to make these drastic, unhealthy weight cuts. And during that time, they endure some of the most severe and tragic, unhealthy situations in order to squeeze themselves into these weight classes. And I've seen such terrible things these athletes do to themselves, and they're listening to the wrong people to get this done. I've heard this all too often through the wrestling world, and wrestlers cut weight more than anybody. They're cutting weight 2, 3, 4 times a week sometimes. They're cutting weight 2, 3 times in the same weekend sometimes. Fighters cut weight 3, 4 times a year, maximum. Wrestlers, they cut weight more than everybody.
I'm curious about this Dr. Pepper diet.
Everything revolved around what I can do for another can of pop. It was never a bottle, it was always a can, which is 0.75, and it tasted colder, and that was my mindset.
So, I'm going to meet up with Coleman Scott. He was a 2012 Olympic bronze medalist, NCAA champion at Oklahoma State, and a guy that knows a lot about weight cutting. He's been cutting weight a little bit in high school, more in college, and through his international career, and he's done it a lot of ways. He's done it the wrong way, he's done it the right way. He worked with Mike Dolce to drop a weight class for the 2016 Olympic trials, and well, since I've decided to put myself through a weight cut, I thought, why not have Coleman come down and coach me through it, because the guy knows what he's doing. He's going to be able to help me get it off in the right way. And it's been 15 years since I did something like this, so a little bit older, not in as good a shape as I used to be, but I'm excited, I guess, to see how my body feels, how it reacts, and what's going to happen. When did you first start cutting weight?
So really college, I want to say learn the wrong way. I was getting up to 160, 165 pounds in between competitions, wrestling 132.
132.
So wrestling 60 kilos, so I was give or take 25 pounds, I was fluctuating, and I was doing that 3 or 4 times a year, killing my body for 2 or 3 years I did that. It'd always be, you know, wake up, work out, always in sweats, never shorts t-shirt. I never saw shorts and t-shirt. Was always sweated out, long sleeve, sweat top, cotton sweats every day. Work out in the morning, whether it be lift or, you know, there's always, I needed to lose, you know, try to lose a pound in the morning. And then I go into practice. If I lost more in the morning, I could have, you know, a donut and a can of pop, because I knew what it weighed. You know, food weighed about a half pound, drink was 0.7. So I was putting about 1.2 on. I'd literally go back up every single night at 9 p.m., do a 45-minute workout, 15-minute treadmill, 15-minute airdyne, 15-minute stationary every single night, and sweat it out, and then I'd get another can of pop. So I'd go to bed, and then I'd feel good, and I'd start the day over. It was terrible, but I was in great shape because I ran so much, you know, and so I was masking it because I was doing so much work. My legs were actually strong because I ran so much, I worked so, you know, I did so much extra on them. I just, that's how I had to do it. And I was stubborn because I was having success, you know, and probably would have had more, you know, looking back on it, but I was still having some mild success in college, and, you know, I was hitting some achievements that I had by doing it that way. And so it was hard to change.
All right,
let's
find out where we are.
See where we're starting. 54.4.
54.4, so we gotta get down at least into the 40s.
48, 49.
48.
Be good.
49.
It's a good goal.
All right, let's do it. No sweat.
No sweat. Usually for us is, you know, sauna, break your sweat, you know, exercise in the sauna, and then of course a little bit of exercise out. You know, the main goal is to break your sweat, you know, probably get your heart rate up a little bit, and then you can sort of tail on through that. You don't have to, you just have to maintain for a while to make sure that your body's just continually just sweating and, you know, keeping it off of you. And once you start, it doesn't stop.
The typical athlete, what they do is they rely on the saunas. They'll wear plastic suits in a 180-degree oven. With hats and gloves, and everything's tucked into itself. And sometimes there's blankets on top of you, and sometimes you have 2 or 3 teammates and coaches hugging you and holding you and rubbing you for more body heat.
I'm going to take all the water I have that I can get my body to drop off. I look like a mummy laying on the ground, and my body is on fire as far as the heat that's on it, and so I'm perspiring, I'm dropping all this water out.
You're going through a lot of emotions. Your body's really not supposed to be at 180 degrees trying to lose weight. You know, we're not necessarily built for that per se.
That is the bottom. It's the lowest of the low. You start to question what the hell you're doing. And there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of anxiety. We know that at 3% dehydration, the body starts to cut down. Cognitive performance drops dramatically. Visuospatial awareness drops dramatically. Decision-making, rationale, completely drops to the floor. Well, we're talking about 3%. Some athletes, they're at 8%. They're at 12, 15+%.
I have super hydrated myself, gotten my body used to carrying a lot of water, and now I'm taking and cutting it down to where now I'm only taking little small sips, ice cubes, or no water at all.
Now they're not rehydrating themselves properly, so they're not getting the proper fluids back into their body. They don't have the proper electrolyte balance for the electrical impulse of their heart to even be beating as the way that it should be.
They feel horrible. They're dying. Okay, you're bringing yourself close to your organs shutting down. His body is giving out on him because of what he did to get himself to the fight in that weight cut. That weight cut has killed him.
Whew. This is it. This is the moment. The goal was to get into the 40s, right?
Yeah.
So what we just did, you know, 6 pounds in an hour, compared to the way some of these guys cut weight, it was relatively moderate. You know, it's like a 3 out of 10 on how difficult a weight cut can be, where some of these guys, they're doing 10, 15, 20 pounds over 2, 3, 4 days and doing it the wrong way. There's some really, really bad weight cuts that have happened out there. All right.
6 pounds on the dot.
Awesome.
I'm talking about.
Appreciate you coming out here, Coleman.
Right, anytime.
No time again soon.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be going into a 180-degree oven while even approaching a level of dehydration, definitely not within 5 days prior to athletic competition, as it robs the body of performance.
I remember seeing you walk through the day of weigh-ins, and like they're like, "There's Coleman," and I look, and like it was like everybody was doing that. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, is that Coleman?"
Yeah. And
It looks like hell.
yeah, it was the worst I looked and felt. It was hard, hard on me and my I remember my parents came out, and I didn't even want to see them, because they went from seeing me as a normal person a couple months earlier to this, yeah, and my sisters were there, and Jessica they're going like, holy cow, are you okay, and I didn't want them to even notice me like that, but it doesn't help you walk in and everybody's like, oh my gosh, how did you do it?
Let's just pretend the rules today where you weigh in the morning and wrestle.
Couldn't have done it. No, absolutely not. I was absolutely couldn't get up off of the couch for 3 hours. Went from the weigh-ins to the hotel room, had room service, and laid on the couch for 3 hours before I could get up and go get something else to eat. For me, with the weight cutting, I think that I needed to go through that. I was always a guy that needed some failures in life to see my successes and how to do it the right way.
Tagged him good. A little bit there, Curran. He is out! My goodness!
Why is it that a guy gets knocked out? Why is it that when it looks like this guy didn't hardly get touched, but he goes out? Why is it he's going out from that shot when this guy's getting hit with hammers that you can see his head rocking back and forth and he's not going out? The brain, when it's fully hydrated, sits inside of our skull, and we actually have this lining. It's called the dura. Dura is a contact between the skull and the brain, and it sits on top of the brain. And when you're a fully hydrated athlete, that dura sitting there, you'll get trauma, the brain will move, it might even have little tears, or the capillaries that are between the two actually start to tear, but that dura sitting on top cauterizes. But when we dehydrate the brain and the brain pulls away from that dura and that line, that skull, now we have all of these capillaries that are stretched, and now they're moving and they tear, but the dura cannot stop the bleed. And when you get ones that are big enough, now we have real problems, because that's when we get what we call a subdural hematoma, and we have problems because the fighter can lose their life. I've had too many fights that you can look and say, this guy lost too much weight. He's suffering the effects. He can't function correctly. Man, the things that I've seen from guys cutting, too much weight. One of the biggest, circumstances I had Dada 5000 against Kimbo Slice. Dada lost 40-some pounds to make that 265-pound weight class. He depleted his body of everything that's important to it. I ended up stopping that fight on a punch that missed by that much. He went down based upon he's just exhausted, and I stopped the fight. He went in the back and he had a heart attack, and they've rushed him to the hospital. He had kidney failure. Guys suffering a heart attack based upon the potassium level in their system has been dropped so much. You need potassium to have this electrical function. And when you take the potassium away and now you put the heart under stress, it can actually just stop.
As the athlete is dehydrating, they're reducing total fluid volume. As they're actually squeezing that water out of their body, what happens to their blood? Their blood starts to become very thick, which starts to really challenge the heart. The heart has to work extremely hard to now start pushing this sludge through the body of the athlete, which is now ensuring the athlete is not receiving the proper nutrients they need to survive. We all know athletes who go out there and underperform simply because of the weight cut. They had the best camp of their career. They looked absolutely amazing. They're knocking out world champions, but they can't beat the scale.
Fighters need to be aware of all this. Their trainers need to be aware of it. The promoters need to be aware of it. And so slowly implement certain things that are going to start to limit a person's ability to have this dramatic weight change. The commissions are going to have to, take a look and say, we're responsible. Is what we're doing the best that we can do for the health and safety of the fighters?
Me and Hoist Gracie, maybe 2006, something like that. I had a good experience with it. It was a fun time in my life, and I throw them up on the wall, and then there's my pictures when I was a regulator in Georgia, and now I'm here. My name's Andy Foster. I serve as the executive officer of the California State Athletic Commission. We regulate combat sports in California, pretty much all aspects of it, making sure the bouts are safe, assigning the officials, assigning the inspectors. Pretty much every aspect of combat sports regulation in California runs through the office. I fought amateur first. It was back when amateur and pro weren't that different. I think a lot of it was the differences was you didn't get paid. I think that was the biggest difference. So I had 7 or 8 amateur fights and I had 11 pro fights. After I was a referee for mixed martial arts, I got appointed as the Georgia director. In California, the job came open over here. I put in for it and I got it. I had a commissioner that was on the board named Dr. Van Lemons. And he had kept saying, weight cutting is an issue. And I thought, yeah, but everybody's doing it. Where it really resonated with me, I believe it was 177. And that was actually here in Sacramento, so I was sitting at my desk upstairs. Jeff Sherwood called me. He said, what's happened to Burrell? And I said, what do you mean? Apparently Burrell was in the hospital from a weight cut. That was our main event. I'm just kind of scrambling at this point because we're the day of the weigh-in, he's at the hospital, so he's out. I'm now focusing on regulations about what happens when the main event's canceled and what are we going to do. I mean, we're kind of, not that this has not happened before, but it hadn't happened before in a show of that magnitude. And about 25 minutes later, the same call, Jeff Sherwood again. Andy, I mean, it was literally the same. It was almost the same conversation. It started out so similar as I was like, yeah, you already told me this, but it was another fighter on the card. It was Henry Cejudo. For that weekend, I'm the regulator for the biggest fight in the world. We've lost the main and a significant bout from weight cutting. And very quickly, Dr. Lemons' discussions and lectures, or whatever you want to call it, started to resonate with me, and I'm like, this is worse than it was.
Economically, I can tell you, promotions are losing, okay? They're losing money based upon weight cutting.
Khabib Nurmagomedov was infamously pulled from his main event title fight versus Tony Ferguson due to bad weight cutting, where he was hospitalized. That probably cost the organization millions of dollars.
Do you think they like losing their main events or like losing their fights on their card? I doubt it.
There's the future loss of money because now I might not buy a ticket when Khabib's gonna fight because I don't know if he's actually gonna make it to the event.
Their problem is they believe that we're gonna lose more fights, which is gonna lose us more money if we start to limit people. And it's like, no, you're not. You're not gonna lose any more. You're already losing. What you're gonna do is change people's behavior. This is a problem for me because I don't want to be the guy standing in the middle of a ring, allowing a guy to get hit, and then he doesn't make it out of it. One of the big things that I always worried about was, look, I've never had anybody go inside of a cage, fight, and not be able to come back if they wanted.
Weight cutting isn't just a problem for fighters with 6-figure sponsorship deals. Amateurs and athletes in the lower tier promotions also have to cut weight, at times to a much more extreme degree. At these levels, the fighters don't have the same resources or education as higher level athletes. As a result, the ramifications of a bad weight cut can be much more dangerous.
I beat a 10th planet black belt to get this one. I beat a black belt to get that one. I beat a 320-pound guy to get that one. And this was a 205 light heavyweight MMA title.
I'm standing here in front of Gracie Baja West Chase, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym in Houston, Texas. We've traveled here to talk with MMA fighter CJ Hancock, who's experienced the consequences of extreme weight cutting firsthand.
I wanted to fight because at first I wanted to prove something, and then eventually it just became kind of a way to make a name for myself, because eventually I want to open a gym, and it's easier to open a gym if people know who you are. My first welterweight fight, my weight cut was easy. I only had to cut like 3 pounds, I think, the day before weigh-ins, 5 pounds the week of. But then when I came in to fight the guy, he was way more muscular, way bigger than me. That's why this time I wanted to be bigger. I wanted to cut, say, 10 to 15 pounds. When I first got the call for the fight, I was 220. 2 weeks before the fight, I had my weight down to 200. And then I cut the last 30 pounds in 2 weeks. I cut 15 pounds in like 2 days. I wanted to be bigger for this fight. I wanted to be the bigger, stronger guy, because my last fight, the guy was bigger and stronger than me, and I didn't want that to happen again. Normally, I don't get in the sauna and cut water by sweating that soon as I did for this fight. I started about 4 days out, and I think that was part of the problem, that I was dehydrated for 4 days straight. It's mind over matter. You get in the sauna and you sit there and you sweat and sweat until you sweat out 10, 15, 20 pounds. Some guys are really good about doing that and then putting the weight back on immediately right after. It seems like my body used to be able to recuperate faster. I used to be able to cut the weight and then hydrate, and my body would feel better faster. But this time it didn't. It just didn't happen at all. But I thought, you know, I can push through this. I can, if I'm mentally tough and I'm strong, my body can take whatever I can throw at it. Round 1 was okay up until I went to take him down. Once I went to take him down, I clinched up with him and I had him up against the cage. Everything was off. My heart started making weird rhythms. My breathing was off. I lost all my training. My mind was telling my body to do things, but it wasn't cooperating with me. I got lightheaded, I felt nauseous, I felt like I was gonna fall over. Everybody's been gassed out before. You know what it feels like to be gassed out. It wasn't that. I didn't feel like I was gassed out. I felt like something was wrong with my body. I'm there, I throw a jab, I step back, and then all of a sudden I just fall over, and you know, my hand shoots up to the sky, and it just felt like my body gave out on me. You know, it just felt like you pushed me too far, and that's it.
I remember he was doing pretty okay in the first round. Second round, when he went in and he got rocked a little bit, that's when I could see he just started to slow down, and I just knew right then and there something was wrong. I knew it. And that's when his heart slowly started to stop, you know, but we didn't know that it was going to completely stop. I knew it was wrong when they were doing CPR, because normally fighters just go down, you know, 2, 3, and they just, boom, they cut, whoa, wait, what, I won. No, that didn't happen. You know, they're starting to talk shit when they come up. No, this wasn't the case. He went down and he didn't come back up. And then they had to hit him twice. So yeah, and then he came to, he started breathing, but he was completely unaware. Like, completely unaware of what was going on. He was asking questions like, did I just fight?
The next thing I know, I remember seeing like a fuzzy white light, and you know, I hear voices in the background, and the next thing you know, I wake up in the hospital with my family and my girlfriend there, and you know, everybody's crying, and then they told me what happened, and I couldn't believe it, you know.
As soon as he got to the hospital, I want to say maybe an hour or two into it, that's when he started to come come to and recognize who was around him. Like his family was there, I was there, the doctors were there.
Once I realized that I had my fight gear on, I was like, oh, I must have got knocked out. And I asked, did I get knocked out? What happened? And then they told me my heart stopped for 5 minutes.
They had put already 2 bags of saline, and you could see his muscles like physically start to fill out in front of my eyes. I'm looking at the saline drip. In 2 hours, you can see his muscles just boom, 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 pumping up.
The doctor said I was severely dehydrated. I didn't really know what to think. I had a rush of mixed emotions. Is this going to be my last fight? Will I even be able to compete again? A lot of thoughts were going through my head, a lot of mixed emotions, and where do I go from here? I think weight cutting all around is bad, and when I see people putting themselves through hell just to make weight, it's crazy because I know what they're doing to their body. They're really playing with fate. You know what I mean?
Ignorance is a big problem with weight cutting because everyone thinks, for the most part, I know how to do it.
Why are elite professional athletes cutting weight like amateurs? It's because they are listening to amateur or lesser individuals.
Most guys, when it comes to weight cutting, they're on their own. They don't know that people have died from cutting weight, or they have kidney failure, or whatever the case may be.
The fact that these athletes intentionally allow themselves to be harmed through uneducated and improper preparation makes no sense because the information is out there. The information is available. Many times the athletes are too cheap to hire a coach that actually knows what they're doing. It could be a buddy. Here, Google this. I read this online. That's all you have to do. My friend does that.
Very few people really know how to do it and do it in a way that's as safe as you can do it.
How should an athlete approach making weight, and what should that look like?
What an athlete needs to do is they need to get regular blood work done first and foremost. That allows us to completely understand what's happening with this athlete. What do they actually weigh? They weigh 200 pounds. What's their percentage of body fat? From there, what we do is we find out, well, what's the ideal weight class for the athlete? And that's a conversation. You're 200 pounds at 10% body fat, which means you have 180 pounds of lean mass. In my opinion, you are a perfect middleweight, 185 pounds. The athlete says, well, I think I have a better opportunity down at welterweight at 170. Well, we need to make some off-season adjustments in order for you to do that. That is a 30-pound weight reduction. You're at 10% body fat. There simply isn't the body fat to lose because we're only looking to lose about 3% body fat, right? So that takes them down to 194. Now we're talking about a 24-pound water cut. Put 3 gallons of water side by side by side. You're gonna lose that? No, we're not gonna do that. What we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to take 3, 6, maybe even 12 months, and we're gonna have to reduce your total level of functional tissue. We can change up your training modalities, the actual way that you're stimulating certain type of muscle fibers. The athletes need to be professional enough, and those around the athletes need to be professional enough to address these issues.
Being a professional athlete doesn't mean that you do all the right things, and sometimes they put sugar in their gas tanks. Look at, you're a Ferrari. You should be putting in the highest premium gas you can, and instead you're putting crap in it.
Nutrition, to me, is everything. I don't care how great your skills coach is. If you're not fueled when you walk into that session, and you are not recovering and repairing with the proper fuel when you walk out, you are not retaining that information, you are not retaining the technique that was put into you, you will not be able to further display that. Likely you will get hurt, and you will not be able to exhibit that when you go out to compete. So what's the point of it? What's the point of it?
NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League. Okay, those are the 4 big ones. All right, they all, every one of them, employ chefs for their players. They have nutritionists for their players. All right, they actually cook meals based upon each individual player's needs. What do we do with our athletes? We starve them and dehydrate them to the point of close to going to a hospital, and then expect them to perform in a great fashion the next day. Kidney failures, heart attacks, death. I don't know how much more serious you can get. Look at this, can kill you, and it has. It has killed other people, and it will kill more people in the future if we don't do something to curtail it and stop what guys are doing.
We're in an epidemic. Okay, we have a clear and present danger that's been identified, and it's easily identified to this sport. Okay, and it's called extreme weight cutting. Okay, all we've got to do as regulators is create a fair regulatory environment so these people can still compete. We initially started with more of a measured approach to address the weight cutting. Okay, so by regulation, we banned the use of IVs to rehydrate. We implemented by rule specific gravity testing. We implemented the early weigh-ins here in California by regulation. That wasn't enough. We had a meeting, Commissioner Souter, he said we need to make sure that this is branded appropriately so it's easy to kind of remember. So I came up with 10 points. Okay, that's easy to remember, 10 points. Let's figure this out. Novel idea. Licensed by weight class, for goodness sakes. Imagine that. This 30 and 10-day weigh-in allow us as the regulators to monitor the weight loss. We do it by skies. It shows that we're paying attention. Okay, so we're watching their weight come off. And the idea is to bring them into fight week so they're not having to shed this incredible amount of water at the very last minute and potentially blow the whole fight. Additional weight classes are needed because there's a large group of people that fight between 55 and 85. We added 65 and 75, 95 and 2 1/4. The other points combined with the weight classes will create an environment, a regulatory scheme that will allow these fighters to find their home and fight safely.
I think individuals like Andy Foster really care. And I think he sees that there's a problem here. And they're trying to address the problem, not for money, but to truly help the athlete be healthy and compete as safely as possible.
It's a step in the right direction. Look, is it perfect? It's not perfect.
As good as the intention was, I believe, from Andy and California, athletes are still gaming the system.
What is wrong with the sport of MMA? We have athletic commissions down in Brazil, and we have athletic commissions in England, and we have 60-some, 70-some organizational people that have in their area, they run this sport. And so they go, well, this is what we like to do. You can't ever get 50 kings to decide on the same thing and go the same way. That's what has to change. You have California sitting by themselves. It should be Nevada is doing it, New York is doing it, Florida is doing it, Iowa is doing it. Now, if they're all doing it, fighters know this is what I have to do. There's always a way, okay? But you've got to get people rowing in the same direction.
With this, it is a big cultural change because I think there's a vested interest in some athletes who do game the system and they don't want it to change.
It's supposed to be about a fight where two equally skillful individuals try to figure out who's got the best strategy and who's got the best will and technique. It's not supposed to be about who can do this legal cheating thing best.
Fighters will begin this cut, and let's say they're far out, and it just ain't coming off. Somebody pulls up the commission's weight spreads. They'll lose to the spread, and they're not going to put their body through that. Their opponent didn't get that memo. The next day, the guy that was 6 or 7 over is a good 20 pounds heavier than his opponent, proceeds to beat them up. And then they get their whopping 20%.
Athletes don't care about 20%. I will gladly kick up 20% of my purse to go out there and whip your ass. I know athletes who will pull up short to intentionally gain an advantage that increases their percentage of winning that fight, so now they can move forward and get a bigger contract to bigger paydays. Give up 20% to make 200% on my next fight or down the road. Come on, it's business.
If you only have to lose $2,000 to be the bigger fighter, some fighters have figured up it's the cost of doing business.
Rewarding an athlete for missing weight, it sends the wrong message. Every other athlete's gonna look at that and say, well, shit, he took a chance, he got rewarded. I'm gonna try the same thing.
Fighters are going to do the things that they think are going to get them that position, that place, that championship, that status. They will do things that are detrimental to their health to get there because they don't look at the long term. They're looking at this short term, and that's what's important to them.
What if we say any athlete who misses weight immediately has to forfeit 50% of total earnings? The opponent, as long as they make weight, should be guaranteed their show money, and then they should be subject to a 12-month suspension for missing weight. What are they gonna do? They're gonna start moving up. They're gonna start competing closer to their natural, healthy body weight, which is gonna eliminate this problem of weight cutting. And now we're gonna see athletes actually competing at their real weight class. That's the only way that I see that will start to really change.
In the end, you've got to do what's right. You've got to tell people, hey, we're going to start cutting your ability to do some of these practices away. We're going to start monitoring your weight beforehand. We're going to start monitoring your weight that week of the fight. We're going to start monitoring it the day of the fight after you've weighed in. And if you have this giant fluctuation, we're going to either penalize you by not letting you fight or penalize you by taking money away from you, taking it out of your purse, giving it to your opponent, okay, and make you realize I cannot do the same thing. This is costing me.
The community seems to be moving in the right direction, albeit slowly. There seems to be little consensus on what type of regulation is best for both the fighters and the organizations. Let's check in with CJ Hancock. A few months after a bad weight cut, almost ended his fighting career and his life.
What's up, man? How are you?
How's it going? Good seeing you, man.
Yeah, how you been?
Good.
No weight cut.
Yeah, no weight cut at all. Well, we're here at the Humble Civic Center here in Texas, getting ready for the Texas Submission Hunter Pro. Big event here, grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, basically submission only. We got people of all sizes, belts, and it's gonna be a good show.
What's up, CJ? How you feeling? Hey, man. What's going on?
I will say I'm a little more nervous than usual because of the fact that it's my first time back after a big, crazy step in my life, you know what I mean? Gotta prove that I still got it, you know what I mean? After a lot of people doubted me after that and, they don't realize that it was just, the weight cut. I gotta get that W back,
I never thought he lost anything at all. Like, even, after everything that had happened, like, for the first couple of months, we were worried, even him traveling, getting on the plane, he was, like, worried about, his heart rate and, anxiety and being nervous. But, me, I've always, he's a fighter.
Sure, bro.
I wanted to tell you to your face. I prayed really hard my whole life, dude. I'm so happy you're okay.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
I'm so glad you're okay.
Change is going to have to come. Consequences are going to be there. There is no way that an athletic commission or a promotion can at this point sit there and say, we didn't know.
If you create a culture where the athletes are now competing at their healthy natural weight classes, there's no reason an athlete should ever miss weight. Once the members of the community really start to see this through our eyes and understand what these athletes go through and how different the sport could be once we finally have healthy athletes competing, I can't imagine how we won't be in 100% agreement that this is the only way forward.
Not only is it safer for the fighters, we're gonna put on a better show for the people, you know what I mean?
You will see well-prepared, properly fueled, engaged athletes now competing at 100% of their full ability.
These two athletes, these best athletes in the world in my view, are able to compete and we can have some semblance of a reasonable sport.
Promotions need to step up and put their foot down and say, we're not doing it anymore. There's nothing that's good that comes from it at all.
in changing their behavior, you can change how many of them are going to have bad weight cuts. You're probably not going to lose as many fights, which is going to put you in a position to make more money.
I don't think the general public that views, buys the pay-per-views, watches, buys the tickets, I don't think they really care whether a fighter is fighting at 55 or 70. I think the viewers will still view, the fighters can still fight, everybody can still do it safely.
How did your body, your endurance, just your physical conditioning and everything else feel first time back after all that layoff?
I felt great. You know, I feel like, you know, obviously I've been working a lot, so I haven't been able to train as much as I'd like to. But other than that, I felt great, you know what I mean?
Do you think you'll ever get in a cage and fight again?
I'd like to, you know. At first, I was really hesitant, but maybe give it like, you know, until the end of this year, and then maybe see if I can get passed by a doctor, and because obviously I'm gonna have to go get checked out, and he's gonna have to, you know, sign off on me. And if I can do all that, then, you know, yeah, I'm gonna take another fight.
After speaking with some of the top minds in the business about weight cutting, it's clear that change needs to happen. The consequences of a bad weight cut can be fatal. What is the best path forward? Is there a silver bullet to stop extreme weight cutting? What will it take for real change to occur?
Change affects people. It affects people in different ways, mentally, physically, all those things. But change has to happen, okay? If you don't evolve, you die.